Hi, I'm Erin and I say stuff. And today I want to say more stuff about helping our boys to avoid becoming victims of the male loneliness epidemic and to not grow up to be neets. So, I've talked a bit about leadership skills and controlling ourselves being one of those leadership skills. So, I want to talk a little bit more about controlling ourselves and our urge to say a lot when correcting our kids. So, words are really not as impactful as actions, and I hope that's pretty clear in your own life. So, let's talk about how to make sure that lessons stick. So, with our littlest kids, it's usually the most natural consequences that are the best teachers. So, for example, I worked at a preschool and I had a crowd of little preschoolers who had been running up and down the hallway. I told them once, please don't run, but the lesson, it was words. It really wasn't going to sink in. So I decided some action was going to better teach the lesson. I had a crowd of little preschoolers that were running down the hallway, racing each other, giggling, talking, laughing, looking at each other, not really looking at where they're going. And there was a blind corner just down the hallway where I waited for the little ones to come racing down until I stepped right out in front of them. I knew that I was an immovable mass and I was not going to be hurt by any of these preschoolers hitting me, but they were going to end up probably falling on their little tushes and getting a little bit of a shock and probably learning a lesson about running in the hallway. So they did, actually, and there were a bunch of little kids in the room, not just the ones running down the hallway who I had intended the lesson for, but everyone else in the room saw it and also learned their lesson at the same time, which was pretty convenient and helpful. There have been other instances where we allow consequences, natural consequences, to form in their mind's eye instead of, really talking through what is a consequence going to be. So, for example, that same community center, I was driving a group of kids that were probably elementary school aged or so to the local nickel arcade, and as you can guess, everybody was super excited, including one girl who was sat right behind me who kept shrieking in my ear. And I was driving. It was a van full of little kids going off to the nickel arcade. And as you can imagine, that shrieking was pretty unsettling as I was driving down the highway trying to get them from one city to another. I wanted to get her to stop, and I kept telling her, please, that's hurting my ears. That scares me every time you do that. So finally, I got through to her by asking her, telling her, every time you shriek like that, it scares me and it makes me jump a little bit, and I stop paying attention to traffic. What do you think could happen with a van full of kids if I stop paying attention to traffic? And I tell you what, the disaster that formed in her mind's eye was far more graphic than anything I could possibly convey to her to get her to stop shrinking in my ear. But I tell you what, she sat down and focused on the deck of cards that she had in her hand and shuffling those cards just as mad as she could to control her little body's excitement, because that's really all it was. I knew that it was just because she was so excited to be going to the nickel arcade, because we were giving each kid like $5 in nickels to go play. And she just, it had to escape from her somehow, and it escaped in a shriek. But she learned to control herself by, imagining these natural consequences. And that's a really great, effective tool for kids that are in that middle elementary school, adolescent, preteen age group. Now, for your teens, you're going to need to do something even a little bit more different, and that is to get curious and ask questions. You're going to have to, really just help to dig down into what's wrong instead of lecturing like we want to. Um, And I'll admit it, I was prone to a lecture as well, over grades. Sometimes, but if you get curious, you'll find out things like, I'm having trouble concentrating because I'm sat next to the door where everybody is coming in and going out all class. So I'm struggling because of where I'm sat. Or you'll find out that, you know, it's really a subject matter that's confusing and they need more help. Or they've been put next to somebody who is a pest and a bully, and it's not working out, that they're partnered with them every single time they've got to do a group assignment. So, with an older teenager, resist the urge to lecture, but go to the Toyota quality management method of asking 5 whys and really trying to drill down into the root cause of the reason for the issue. But again, control your urge to do a lot of talking. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in proportion, as we used to say in sales. Anyway, happy parenting. Hope to hear from you. Love to hear your comments on it. Talk to you later.